A little over a year ago, my fiance and I sold our house in the city and moved an hour away to a rural town. We got an amazing deal on our home, which is rare in today's market, of course, and have been enjoying our new quiet life oceanside. Our home is just off the highway and sits on about an acre of land. We have a neighbor on either side of us, but the properties are lined by trees and a river, so it is pretty private. There's nobody directly across from us, and beyond our backyard is the ocean. It's also important to note that our driveway is probably 100 feet long, so anybody who comes to the door is either invited or Amazon. When we first moved in, we were getting weird vibes from the neighbor on the right. A few times we saw him watching us through his attic window that looks down onto our back deck. He would also emerge from the bushes and stand beside the gate to our fence that leads to the ocean. Overall, he seemed weird, mostly harmless, but we installed a front porch cam on the front door just in case. My fiance doesn't like to leave any lights on at night at all, not even a front porch light. This never bothered me though. The porch cam we installed has night vision and the picture is pretty clear at night, so if anybody came up to our door in the middle of the night, we would be able to see them clearly. The camera has an app that sends notifications to our phones when motion is detected. You can also watch the camera on live view and talk to people outside. One night we decided to go to bed early because we weren't feeling very well. We did the usual, turn off all the lights and headed to bed with our 3 dogs. It was only about 9 p.m. but it was winter, so it was pitch black outside. The only light coming from a few solar lights that we have on our steps and the street light at the end of the driveway. We were just dozing off when I heard a noise. I thought I was hearing things because none of the dogs reacted. Typically, one will hear a noise and start barking, and then the other 2 will join in. I asked my fiance if she heard anything and she said no. Then I heard it again and instantly I knew somebody was at our door. Panicked, I told my fiance to open the porch camera app and check the live view while I flicked the lamp on. She started off by telling me that if somebody was there, she would have gotten a notification. When she picked her phone up and turned the screen on, there it was. Motion detected. We exchanged a confused look and my heart jumped into my throat when she opened the live view. Standing on our porch was a young woman with no pants on. She was wearing a puffy jacket and had her shoes slipped on so that the heels of her shoes were crushed under her feet, like she left somewhere in a hurry. She had opened our screen door and was knocking repeatedly on the entry door while staring towards the road. She then shifted her gaze towards our cars and then tried to peek through the stained glass on our entry door. My fiance decided that this woman was trafficked, had escaped her captors and needed our help. I didn't say a word. I just sat there watching this woman knocking on my door. I wasn't getting the same feeling my fiance was. This didn't look like a woman in distress to me. Her behavior was strange and felt sinister. My fiance threw on a sweater and was making her way to the bedroom door. I asked her where the heck she was going and she frantically replied, "She needs our help." I don't know how I convinced her to stay in the bedroom, but I did. It felt weird to call the police because of somebody at your door, but because she appeared to have no pants on, my gut told me to. I called 911. After I got off the phone with the dispatcher, we checked the camera again and she was gone. 20 minutes later, an officer called me. She thanked me profusely for calling and let me know that they had found the woman walking along the highway. I felt like the wind was knocked out of me when she proceeded to tell me that the woman now has pants on and was accompanied by a male. The officer further explained that the pair said they were looking to use a phone. I explained to the officer that we have the whole thing on camera and there is no male in the picture, which led us both to conclude that he was likely hiding behind our cars or in the bushes beside the steps. I also explained that we don't leave any lights on, so if somebody was looking to use a phone, why would they choose the house that's pitch black? The officer agreed that they were likely up to no good and again thanks me for calling. Nothing like that has happened since. I'll never know the true intent of the pantsless woman and her hidden partner, and my gut tells me that's a good thing. I, 21 male, and my girlfriend, 20 female, rented an apartment for a month. The area was secluded and after dark, everybody would mind their own business. Neighbors would hardly talk to each other or even be outside in the evening. Our apartment was in a building with 4 floors, and each floor had a single apartment, and all the apartments were very compact and built to be rented to students. The night we moved in, our taps ran out of water, so I went upstairs hoping to borrow some from the people living upstairs. I realized that 2 out of the 4 apartments above were vacant and locked. The apartment on the 4th floor was lit from the inside, so I decided to ring the bell, but to my disappointment, nobody answered. Over the next week, we used to hear the sound of somebody whacking a rod or some sort of metal on maybe the floor or some other object. This would start late at night after about 1:30 a.m. and continue for hours. Initially, we didn't care about it, but after some time, it got us intrigued. The sound was clearly from one of the apartments above us, but as I already mentioned, 2 of the 3 were vacant for sure, and the third one seemed vacant but was lit from the inside. I knocked on its door many times, but nobody ever answered. The whacking sound was a daily occurrence, and on some very late nights, we could hear somebody climbing the building stairs. It seemed as if we were the only ones living in this building, especially during the day and until the very late nights. We made up theories to convince ourselves that it was nothing, but the pattern of the whacking was too irregular for it to be made by the wind or something other than a person. It would start almost daily at around the same time. We asked people around but didn't get any satisfactory answer. Nobody knew if anyone lived there. Towards the end of our stay, I saw a shady-looking man going upstairs during the day. I asked him if he was the owner of the apartment upstairs. He said he was, also including the one on the 4th floor. I asked him if anyone lived upstairs and also about the whacking sound. He told me nobody did and that he's looking for tenants. He said that he had no idea about the sound. To my surprise, he then asked me, "So, for how long are you going to stay here?" "4 more days. We'll leave on the 30th of this month," I replied. He asked me if anyone else had rented the place for the next month, and I told him that I didn't know. The strangest part is that for the next 4 days, there was neither the whacking sound nor the sound of somebody climbing up the stairs late at night. However, my girlfriend's internship got extended by 2 days, and we decided to stay there, and just as I had anticipated, the whacking sound resumed after the 30th, the day we were supposed to leave. I don't know what it was. I won't ever know, but I'm just happy that we got out of the place without any consequences. It really scared me sometimes, and it feels weird thinking about it even now. I've been lurking in this subreddit for about a week, and I finally decided to post my experience. I am from a small town in Appalachia with a population of less than 7,000. There were about 80 people in my high school class, and people are generally very trusting. This story took place early last September, so it would have been a little bit less than a year ago. I was a 20-year-old male at the time, and had just entered my junior year of college about 3 hours from my hometown. In high school, I had a close cohort of friends. There were about 8 of us that were very close. As things go, things changed when we went to our respective colleges. I fell out of touch with many of them, but I did retain contact with a couple of them. The ones featured in this story are Mac and Devin. Last September, I got a call from my mom telling me the news. Devin's father had been killed in an accident on his way to work. It was a sudden but brutal collision involving a semi. Devin's family was not from the area, and they had moved to my town during high school because her father had gotten a job there. Having no family and a dispersed set of friends, she didn't have many people to lean on during this time. Mac contacted me and wanted to know whether I planned on attending the funeral, which had been planned for Friday morning. I had an important class Friday afternoon, but I told him that I would come up that evening and we could occupy Devin. Mac made the 6-hour drive from his college to attend the funeral, and I made it into town later that evening. We decided the 3 of us would spend a few hours at Mac's house. We were going to just hang out, and Mac and I were determined to preoccupy Devin. I got there around 6 o'clock, and we jumped right into it. We talked about college, watched Netflix, and played board games. Despite the circumstances, it was a pretty good night. I got up to leave about half an hour after midnight. After some tearful goodbyes, I got in my car. Now, a little geography. Mac's house is a little bit more than a mile from my parents' house. There are no red lights and 1 stop sign. At that time of night, I could make the trip in less than 2 minutes. Being in a rural part of Appalachia, though, the roads were far from straight. In fact, Mac's house was just off a winding 2-lane road. There were several blind curves that stop you from seeing what's going up ahead, and there are no guardrails or streetlights to speak of. So I start off on what I thought would be a brief, uneventful journey home. I pull out of his driveway and start on my way. I start into the first blind curve, and I'm greeted by something entirely unexpected. I see the car first. It is a white, older model sedan. It is half in my lane and half in a culvert. I have to quickly swerve to avoid hitting it, and I notice a figure waving his arms as I slam on the brakes. I end up stopped on the side of the road. There is no shoulder, so my car is sitting in the road and in the grass, about 100 feet past his car. At this point, I should have kept going and called the police for help when I got home, but this is not what I did. I avoided that feeling in my gut, put my car in park, and opened my door. I stepped outside and immediately noticed the damage to the vehicle. The front end had serious damage. There were no other cars around, so I conclude the driver must have collided with the cliffside on the other side of the road. It is really dark though, so I have a hard time figuring out what happened. By the red light emitted from my taillights, I see the figure approaching me. "Hey buddy, I need some help." "What happened? Is there somebody you'd like me to call?" "No, I tried to call my brother already, but he didn't answer. He lives just up the road." "Oh, you want me to call the police then?" "No, you can't call the police. I just need my car pulled out of here." He points into the culvert. "I need somebody with a truck. My brother has one." He's walking closer to me and I'm beginning to make out some of his features. He is a little bit shorter than me, but easily has 75 pounds on me. At this point, the little light left me unable to discern much else, except that he was wearing a baseball hat. "Well, I don't have a truck, so I guess I can't help you." I was beginning to feel very uncomfortable. He kept approaching me and there was something wrong in his voice. A flatness, like he was not emotional at all about the predicament he was in. I started to walk backwards towards my car door. "Drive me to my brother's house. He lives just up the road." He points in the opposite direction of my home as he walks toward my passenger side. I have to get home. My family is expecting me. This is a lie. They had all been asleep for hours and I was still at Mac's house for all they had knew. "It'll just take a minute. He lives right down the road. His house is only about a mile away." He keeps progressing. My heart is racing, but I am in a strange predicament. I want to get the heck out of here, but there isn't any ideal way to do it. My car doors are unlocked and he was getting very close to my car. Being as fast as possible, I couldn't get in and lock the door before he opened the one on the other side. I certainly couldn't put it in drive and pull away before he put at least some of himself in my passenger seat. Seeing as how he was going to get in my car if he wanted to, I decided to do the cordial route. If this was going to happen, it was going to be on my terms. I knew the road he was talking about. My sister's boyfriend lived there, and I knew that it was less than a mile from where I currently sat. It was a one-lane holler, as we colloquially refer to a hollow. Maybe he was telling the truth. Maybe I was about to do a good deed. "Okay, get in," I said. He sits down in my passenger seat about the time I make it into the driver's seat. Since the doors were open, my car's interior lights were on. This was the first good look I had at him. He was older than me, probably in his late 40s. He was dirty. His hands were greasy and his shirt was full of holes, and there were literally flies congregating around him. My car instantly smelled like body odor and bodily fluids, if you catch my drift. I experienced immediate regret. This was a horrible idea. My parents had taught me about this kind of stuff. My mother was a true crime junkie, and she would always warn me about situations like this. He closes the door and the lights go out. I make a U-turn and start heading toward the road. He insists on talking to me, although I would much prefer the hum of the radio. He asks me my name, asks where I live, asks me what I do. I evade every question the best I can, or ones that I deem too personal, for I did not want him knowing too much about me. I begin to get the distinct feeling that something is wrong with him. He speaks void of emotion or any kind of inflection. Sometimes he has a hard time getting the words out. I conclude he is either on a mind-altering substance, there is zero prescription drug abuse issue in the area, or he is playing with less than a full deck of cards. We are turning onto the road when he begins admiring my car. It is a fairly nice foreign car that my parents bought for my 16th birthday. He is rubbing the dashboard with his greasy hand before he starts pressing buttons, both on the car and deep in my psyche. This is a nice car, a really nice one. You know, I'd kill to have one like this. I kid you not. He literally said he would kill for my car. I didn't immediately take it as a threat, as there was absolutely no emotion in the statement, and it was a common turn of phrase. Nevertheless, I was very uncomfortable. My sister's boyfriend's house is just barely in sight. I am so worked up that I decide I'm going to stop there. I'm pretty sure I could get a few beats in on the door before this guy attacks me for not taking him to his brother's place. As I approach his driveway, my heart sinks. There are no cars there, and there isn't a garage. Nobody was home. I'm on my own. As we pass the driveway, he says something that catches me off guard. His house is about a mile up ahead. I thought his house was a mile from your car. No, it's a mile from here. Okay. I keep driving but look at my odometer. I'm giving him 1 mile, that's it. We drive in silence, for which I'm grateful. He's still fondling my dashboard, but I figure I can ignore that. We go about 3/4 of a mile further up this desolate hollow when I ask him how much further. I think he can tell I'm getting irritated and scared. Just up that way. Turn right. I stop in the middle of the abandoned road. He's pointing to a gravel road on my right. It is barely wide enough for my car and it shoots steeply up the mountain. He lives a mile up that road. Go that way. There was no way I was about to drive further into this desolate place when it seemed as if he was making the directions as he went. There was no sign of life up there, and we had already gone further than he had originally said. No, that's as far as we go, I say to him. Get out. No. Come on, man, we're almost there. Just turn up that way. I look around and I have limited options when it comes to a weapon. In fact, I have one option. The previous winter had been a bad one, so I kept a brush/ice scraper combo on my floorboard. It was plastic but decently heavy. The scraper part had a sharp edge. I casually pick it up and sit it in my lap. No. Get out. He was very reluctant. My makeshift weapon and the fact that I was literally in the driver's seat caused him to swing his door open. The lights instantly came on, and he turned to look at me squarely in the face. He was smiling and his teeth looked as if he hadn't seen a dent in since before I was born. Please. This was the first time anything he said had any inflection at all. He said it as if he were trying to sound pitiful, but it came off as mocking. No, I said sternly, and he began to get out of the car. He was in the process of closing the door when he said one more thing. He leaned into the open door and said, I really like your car. He slammed the door and I took off. It was a one-lane road, so I couldn't immediately go the direction that I needed to. I went up a couple of 100 feet and turned around in someone's driveway. When I approach where I left him out, I see that he has made no progress up the gravel road towards his brother's house. In fact, it doesn't look like he's moved at all. I slow down when I get close to him. I don't want to risk this man jumping in front of me or anything. He stares at me as I pass and I floor it. As I drive away, I can barely make out that he has started to walk. Not up to the mountain, not further into the hollow, but toward the way I had driven, toward the main road. The wrecked car was still there when I drove by, and I went straight home and lay in my bed, too terrified to sleep. I don't know what he had planned, but I am pretty sure I wasn't driving him to his brother's house. This took place when I-25 female was about 11 or 12. I was walking home from school one afternoon, which didn't take very long, as I lived in the same neighborhood. I was on the same road as my house when a car pulled over to me, and the guy driving complimented me on my shoes. He seemed to be in his late 20s or 30s, and had a really friendly atmosphere around him that I didn't initially question. My shoes weren't anything special, just black skater-type shoes with 3 pink stripes on either side. He said his daughter would love these shoes, and he wanted to buy her the same kind, so he inquired if he could ask me some questions about them. I got a weird vibe immediately, but being so close to my house and being unbelievably naive, I agreed to answer his questions. He pulled over and parked just up in front of me and opened his driver's side door. He beckoned me over and started asking typical questions, such as where I got them, how much, were they good quality, etc. I didn't know the brand of the shoe, so I slipped it off to check the label while balancing on one foot. He said he wanted a closer look, so he kept trying to get me to go closer. He asked to see my shoe, and being so young and stupid, I agreed. Luckily, I didn't go closer to the car, but instead I passed him the shoe. He kept suggesting that I should rest my socked foot on his car, as he was concerned if my balance faltered, my sock would get dirty. This had gotten too weird for me, and I began asking for my shoe back, suggesting that my mother was waiting for me. He then proceeded to bring my shoe up to his face and inhale deeply. He turned to me with a huge smile, complimenting me on how wonderful my shoe smelled, how soft and sweet my feet must be, and similar comments. At this point, I was done with the interaction, shoe back on or not, so I once again asked for my shoe back, as I didn't want to explain to my mom why I came home with only one shoe. He eventually handed it back to me after first trying to Cinderella it on my foot, me obviously declining, and drove off. I was so embarrassed at my stupidity and naivety that I didn't tell that story until years later. I hope no other kids were as idiotic as I was that day. I just discovered this sub and thought it might be a good place to share this story. About 3 months ago, my wife, then fiance, and I were driving from Oregon to Arizona. We were in a part of Nevada that was in the middle of nowhere. We were on the end of a 70-mile stretch with no cell service, and it was midnight. My wife is a small girl, only 5'1" and around 100 pounds. I often joke when I go to see her at work, "Oh, it must be take your child to work day." She's that small. It was my wife's turn to drive at this point, so I was reclined in my seat, out of view sleeping. She shakes me awake and says, This guy has been following me on my ass for a while and I don't know what his issue is. I glance behind us to see a big F-350 only about 10 feet behind us. I tell her to speed up a bit, figuring he was just wanting us to go faster, but he keeps the same distance from us. All of a sudden, he shoots into the oncoming lane, overtakes us, then proceeds to slow in front of us, bringing his and our speed to only about 10 miles an hour. She backs off a considerable distance when he slams on his brakes and starts opening his door. At this point, I sit all the way up. I'm a pretty big guy and roll my window down. He spots me, slams his door shut and takes off. I'm not one to jump to conclusions, but I feel that if he didn't see me, he would have definitely tried to take my wife. It shook us up pretty bad, and at the next gas station we found, the attendant called it in. Luckily, I got his plate numbers. And that's why you don't drive in the middle of nowhere alone in the middle of the night, because you never know who's out there. This story happened to me, female 35, about 4 years ago, but I've been listening to a podcast lately that talks about creepy encounters and they mentioned this subreddit. I thought maybe my story fits here. About 4 summers ago, I was driving home from a friend's house by myself. Despite it being after midnight, the night was still really warm and I had all my windows down, welcoming the fresh air. I live in a decently sized suburb, about 100,000 people of a big city. And while some areas are busy and modern, other areas feel way more like a rural small town. For example, 1 block down from a main highway is a back road that cuts through big farmlands. It's a good road to take when the highway is backed up with traffic, but driving it at nighttime is always a bit sketchy. The road has 2 narrow lanes with deep ditches on either side that I've seen many cars end up in, and the road is a bit windy as it parallels the dike in some areas. To top it all off, there are virtually no streetlights on the road, except for 1 street light right near the dike's entrance. So needless to say, because this road is a bit precarious, I was taking my time driving, enjoying the quiet night. I don't usually drive with music on if I'm really trying to focus, with the warm wind in my hair. As I am taking a very sharp corner, I hear, "Stop, help," from outside. I immediately slow down, put my hazards on, and pull off to the shoulder. My heart is racing. That was definitely a woman's voice and she needed help. I am immediately torn between wanting to help a woman in trouble and my early formed instinct shouting at me that this is really dangerous. Just as I'm trying to decide what to do and if I ever actually heard somebody calling for help, a woman comes stumbling through the shrubs, down from the dike trails that parallel the road. Thankfully, the only street light on this road was working so I could take in the woman's appearance immediately, even if she didn't come from the dike's entrance, but from the shrubs and trees a few feet away from it. This woman is maybe in her late 40s to early 50s, wearing a pair of denim shorts, a tank top, and flip-flops. She hurriedly walks over to my car, which I'm still in with the windows down, and is thanking me for stopping and saying that I need to come with her. So while I am obviously concerned, an immediate warning bell goes off when she says this. She wants me to go with her, this random lady who emerged from the pitch-black shrubs to walk back into said shrubs, that are dark, mind you, along the dike where nobody can see us. Immediately, no. While she seems panicked, she seems more concerned about getting me to go with her than telling me what's wrong. Finally, I got it out of her that she and her friend, male, no idea age, rode their bikes to a spot on the dikes to go swimming to cool off, but he hit his head. Now, the dikes are very popular for walking and biking during the day, but I can't imagine they're a great hangout spot at night, as there's tons of mosquitoes in that water, tons of bears and coyotes, and unless you're lighting an illegal campfire, the only light that you'd have is the stars. But also when I asked her whereabouts he was located, she just kind of pointed to the eastern part of the trail. When I pushed to ask how far down the trail or if he was on the bank of the dike, she would deflect and say I needed to come with her. She also wouldn't clarify if he hit his head while swimming or if he fell off of his bike. Eventually, she got frustrated with me asking these questions and tried to grab my wrist to get me to come with her. I recoil and she tries again, and I back away from her while firmly stating that I wasn't going into the dark with her, but I will call an ambulance. She didn't have a phone. It's probably worth mentioning here that I suggested calling an ambulance right away, but she said no, that I needed to go with her before launching into her story. She seemed frustrated by this, but I called anyways. I called emergency services, gave the dispatcher my location, and as I'm doing my best to explain the situation to the dispatcher, she takes my phone from me and starts hurriedly repeating the same vague story to the dispatcher. I am still super on edge and a bit surprised that she just took my phone out of my hand mid-sentence, but I'm also trying to be understanding that there is a real possibility that her friend is seriously hurt. While she's speaking with the dispatcher, I watch as she walks out of earshot of me. Odd, and I realize she's not wet. Didn't she say that she was just swimming? Her hair was dry and her clothes were completely dry too. And where was her bike? If he was way down that trail, wouldn't getting on the bike to find help be better? Thankfully, a truck with company decals was making its way around the corner and I waved it down, just hoping somebody could help me with this situation as my observations of the woman were making me more nervous. The driver, around 30 male, pulls over and I ask him if he wouldn't mind waiting with me until the ambulance arrives. He looked like he was getting off a construction-like night shift, so I felt bad, but he agreed he would stay, stating that he was a little suspicious of this situation. I am not really sure why he felt that way, as I hadn't told him anything that she'd done or said yet, but after telling him the story, he agreed that it was weird and thought she might run off with my phone because of how far away she was talking to the dispatcher. The woman hangs up and walks the phone back to me and once again tries to get us to both go with her. The truck driver tells her it's probably best to wait for the ambulance because if they show up and she's not here, they won't know where to go on the trail. Again, I really don't want to read into how she was acting too much because she could be genuinely worried and scared for her friend, but she seemed more frustrated by us than worried now, and she wouldn't respond to any questions the truck driver was asking about her friend or what happened. Within minutes, an ambulance arrived, and 2 paramedics got out. The woman starts walking towards the entrance path to the dike, without even saying anything to the paramedics or responding to their questions about where her friend is. They all disappear into the dark trail. A few minutes later, a police car and 2 officers pulled up, and I told them that they went east on the trail, and the officers followed. The truck driver and I waited around for about 10 minutes to see if the police needed to talk to us and see if her friend was okay. But when nobody emerged from the trail, we figured the police could contact me if they needed to and decided to leave. I thanked the truck driver for stopping to assist me and we parted ways. I was still shaking as I got in my car and drove the rest of the way home, replaying the whole thing in my head. Was I overreacting or was that actually weird? I never did get a call from the police to follow up about anything, and I never knew what happened to the woman and her friend. I tried searching local news for any info. If her friend was really hurt, I hope he is okay and made a full recovery. But it's been 3 years, and when I think back to that moment, I still get that sinking feeling in my stomach. Something just didn't add up about that situation. Like too many odd details that weren't fitting in the picture right. I can't seem to shake the feeling that something more sinister waited for me in the darkness of that trail. This is an ongoing problem with the most recent event happening last night. For reference, I'm a small female, barely over 5 foot tall, and weigh right around 100 pounds. Also, I unfortunately live the kind of life where my schedule is very routine and predictable. I'm going to try to keep this short. I have a tendency to ramble when I'm nervous. It started when a guy was caught standing outside my front room window during the spring of 2017. I have a large dark yard with plenty of places to hide, and most of my neighbors have a not my problem attitude, so he was able to do this for a couple of months. Instead of calling police, I bought cameras and a lot of motion lights, and the guy never came back. In April of this year, I noticed a guy sitting in a very identifiable truck about 2 blocks away from my daughter's school. He was parked in an odd spot, so I figured his truck broke down and he was waiting for a ride, but he parked there once a week for the next 4 weeks. On May 21st, I saw the guy in the truck driving around my cousin's house while I was there. When I was leaving, he was coming by again, so I waited for him to get in front of me so I could take down his license plate number. Then I quickly drove to my sister's house, which is where I spend most of my time. My sister's house is just off of our town's main road. The town park is across the main road from my sister's. You can easily see her house from the parking lot and vice versa. May 22nd, I take my daughter to school and go to my sister's. I go out onto her porch to smoke, and the guy in the truck is sitting at the park. They were redoing the parking lot and had it roped or taped off, but he pulled his truck up there anyway. He was there for 30 minutes. I took a terrible picture of the truck with my phone before he left. I told my sister and everybody about the truck. My niece Jane just got her first job at one of the fast food places in town. Our town literally has 2 fast food places and they are right beside each other. If you park at McDonald's, you're facing the Hardee's and vice versa. Jane has been working for a month now and her schedule has been the same every week. On May 23rd, the guy in the truck was sitting at the park again. My sister loaded the kids in the car to get to Jane. The guy in the truck followed my sister to Jane's work, but he pulled in the other fast food place and parked across from my sister and waited. Jane got in the car, and then they went home and he stayed in the parking lot. May 26th, my sister and I go to pick Jane up from work, and she tells us the guy came through the drive-thru that night, and he kept going on about how he knew her and how he's seen her before. She's just trying to get him his stuff and get him away from the window. He asked her name and she didn't reply, just left the window to get his food. When she came back with his food, he said, "Jane?" She said yes, and he left. We had a couple more run-ins with him. Nothing too much. Everything he did, he had an excuse to do. Anybody can sit at the park. Anyone can eat fast food, and we didn't have proof he was actually following us until last night. Last night, my sister and I drove across town to our friend Lynn's house. We parked at Lynn's, and the three of us went walking on the bike/walking path. We walked on the path for about 45 minutes. We were going to walk more, but I noticed some taillights by Lynn's carport. We power walked toward Lynn's house, trying to figure out what was going on. And we were about half a block from Lynn's, and the vehicle in the alley pulls off. My sister and I ran up the side of the road by Lynn's to try to catch who was coming out of the alley. It was the guy in the truck yet again. We went and checked Lynn's house. It was still locked, so I guess he was just sitting in his truck in the alley behind their house. Finally, it felt like he had done something less normal or explainable, so we flagged down a cop and told him the whole story and showed him the pictures we had of the guy in his truck. The cop said that he would look into it, and if he saw him, that they would shake the tree, and told us if we saw him again to call. To end this long story, I still feel like we did something wrong talking to the cops. I feel like we overreacted or something, so I guess I'm posting here to see what others think. Thanks for reading or listening. I was just 18 then, attending Laura's wild birthday party at her house, where the booze flowed freely. I had a policy of only drinking what I personally pour out of a bottle or an unopened can. I was normally very careful. Towards the middle of the party, I was introduced to Eric, a friend of a friend's. After a few jokes, he said, "I could really use with some coffee right now." Then he proceeded to reach into his bag and pulled out a sachet of instant coffee and a bottle of Nutella. I was intrigued. He went into the kitchen and came back with a steaming mug. The smell of that Nutella coffee was so good. So good that I forgot to be careful. He watched me for a moment, then he insisted that I take it. It didn't take much convincing from him. I thanked him and I drank the coffee happily. 20 minutes later, I started feeling really sleepy. It was weird since caffeine tends to get me hyper and gives me insomnia. I shouldn't have been sleepy. Eric was still chatting with me, but I was finding it harder and harder to focus. I made him move for the bathroom and he stood to help me. I stumbled into Laura as we made our way out of the living room. Just at that moment, I had this gut instinct that I needed to throw myself on Laura. I was barely coherent at this point, but I focused all my attention on wrapping my arms around my friend. I can't even remember what happened for the rest of the night. In the morning, I found myself sleeping on Laura's bed while she was sleeping next to me. Apparently, I had clung onto her tightly even as Eric sought to untangle me. She sensed that something was up and decided not to let him take me away. After a while, Eric left the party. Several people then told her that he had a history of preying on girls and that they were glad he was gone. Laura basically spent the rest of the party sitting on the couch with me, hugging her and snoring away. And then she dragged me to bed with her. I am really lucky to have a friend like her. And girls, never ever drink anything at a party that you didn't pour yourself. Even something as delicious as Nutella coffee. I'm a 17-year-old female, but at the time I was probably around 12 or 13 tops. Being only a whopping 5'1" and 97 pounds now, I can't even imagine the little shit I was then. My dad, older brother, and I moved in with my grandma many years ago because my dad went through a nasty divorce and my mom needed a lot of help with the house and money. I went from a peaceful neighborhood to this shady one, and being young, I never put a guard up. We rarely locked our doors due to my grandma and dad both being very social and going out a good amount while I was home alone if my brother was out too. This was before I even got a big dog or my scrumpy little one, so I was totally alone. My house is over 100 years old, and the eerie sounds I always hear seem to have an explanation. However, while I'm in my room reading the juiciest chapter book of 7th grade, my mind can't focus on the words I'm reading, yet the random creaks coming up from the old worn floorboards. My ears perk as I focus for more sounds and came up short, reassuring the bits of fear peeking inside of me. It was beautifully silent as I relished in being alone, then all at once there was noise everywhere. First, I heard the crash of glass coming from right next to my room, which would be my grandmother's room. I don't let the fear take over while my fight or flight instincts take over. I decided neither were great options since the only way outside is by bolting down the stairs located right outside of my door. Yet I would have to pass my grandma's room. I settled on locking my door and squeezing into my stuffed closet with my pink Razor cell phone. I first dialed my dad's number to be crushed with the sound of his voicemail. I didn't want to dial 911 since even at that age, I knew nobody in my house would be pleased with the cops poking around. I talked my confidence up and chose to peek under my bedroom floor, and if all was clear, I would exit. First leaving my closet, then crouching on the itchy carpet, it only took seconds for shadowy toes to walk past my door. I held my breath as the shoes walked back and forth from my father's room to my grandma's, and then they very eerily slowed to a stop before my door. The rustling of my doorknob made my body shoot up and stare at the contact. This seemed to make the person angry as banging filled my room as the door vibrated harshly. A scream of a woman pierced my ears as I tried to silence my terrified cries. I pressed call as soon as 911 answered. I only whispered that a woman was in my house and held the phone near the crack of the door to be sure they had heard the screaming. The woman on the line reassured me police were coming and to sit tight. The pounding on my door had yet to cease, and my body was already soaked with sweat and tears, though it had only been minutes. I ripped my room apart, still trying to be quiet for hope the woman would believe the room was really empty and leave. After deciding I couldn't wait for her to get into my room, as it only took a coin or a long nail to unlock my door, I unplugged my lamp. Standing in front of my shaking door, I felt like I was finding the courage to leap from a skyscraper. Finally, I agonizingly slowly unlocked the door. All at once, I ripped the door open and threw the lamp straight at my face of a greasy older woman, clothed in dirty shreds, and didn't stay to watch the outcome. I ran downstairs my steps, hoping to keep my balance, and tore through the front door heading to my neighbors who, though I wasn't close with, I knew were decent people through my grandma. Not long after 2 cop cars pulled up and my neighbor met them outside and filled them in on what I told her. They swept my house and came out with a woman with a small trail of blood coming from a cut below her right eye. Her weak, disheveled appearance made me feel a bit guilty as I probably could have just ran right past her. That was until hours later after talking to police and my father, he sat me down in the kitchen. My dad told me I did good and to not feel bad. I told him I didn't have to hurt the woman, and the cops told me she was confused and battered. He then told me what the police didn't. The woman did not try to steal anything, even though both bedrooms she did enter were greatly disheveled. He informed me that she had a paring knife and a needle that was filled with a not yet known substance. We were later informed that she had confessed to breaking in to steal items to sell for drugs. Her needle was filled with some sort of mixture of street drugs. We soon got our first dog, who has come to my rescue more than once since. Also, it became quite a habit for me to constantly have my door locked now. It began only when I slept. However, I kept feeling eerie just being in my room while it was quiet, so my room is now always locked while I am in it. Okay, very short backstory. I became homeless at 16 and through some help, I found a place for people between 16 through 25, which gave me a house to stay in until we could find me a permanent place. I was put in a rough area close to the center where I could get help and so on. This is the first story of many stories of my roommate at Rush. The first one was my first ever roommate. The house was shared exception of the bedrooms which had fireproof doors with locks on. My room was the larger bedroom and the smaller room was where my roommate lived. The first day of her moving in, our Rush house worker comes round and introduces me to Holly. Name changed, of course. Holly was a large girl who was about 22 to 24 at the time and played the sweet, "Aw, you're only 16" kind of role and said she would look after me to the worker. I smiled and did it all back, but I already had the feeling that she wasn't somebody I wanted to look after me at all. She just had a creepy feeling, like she was over the top sweet to hide something. After that little intro, we didn't speak a lot. When I was downstairs, she stayed upstairs, and when I went to my room, she went downstairs. It didn't bother me since Friday to Sunday she was out getting wasted, so I had the house to myself. Anyways, one day I'm sitting downstairs watching a bit of the German health show to make myself feel a bit better about the situation I was in, and I hear her stomping downstairs. She opens the door and tries to make some small talk. "You know, where are you from? Why did you leave? Blah 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 blah." After 10 minutes of her talking about ex-boyfriends and intimate shit I didn't care about, she comes out with, "And are you a virgin?" I stared at her for a good 5 seconds and replied, That's a pretty weird question to ask a 16-year-old. She laughs it off. We're both girls, what does it matter? I get up and reply. I'm not really into girly chats. Do you mind? She stands out of the way so I can nope it back to my room, thinking thankfully it's Friday. Fast forward to about 1 a.m. where I was sat in bed reading a magazine when the front door bangs, followed by, shit, shh, come into the living room. At this point, I'm just thinking, man, there goes my Saturday morning of chilling in the house when suddenly they are talking hushed and fast. I stay quiet on the bed listening when a man's voice replies to the whisper. I'm not paying $300. If you don't know it's $150, it's a no. His foreign accent also sounds very angry to say the least, but Holly becomes equally irate too. I ask, but she didn't say yes or no, which probably means yes. She's only just turned 16. A second man chimes in with the same accent, but a more serious tone. So she is 16. I hear Holly stand up. Yes. Now give me $300 or screw off. No skin off my nose. There are offers out there. As soon as he said 16, I knew he was talking about me. My heart hit the floor and I sat frozen in my bed, hoping I locked my bedroom door. I heard her heavy footsteps slowly come up the stairs. Every step up, I felt a cold chill. Hey, you awake? She slurred. She did do a pretty good impression of being wrecked, but still I stayed silent, hoping she thought I'd gone out. Hello? My name. The handle wobbled, but like an idiot, my door wasn't locked and it came open. I don't think I've ever thrown myself out of bed so fast in my life. I slammed that door hard enough that she fell back into the hall. I thanked Rush for making my side of the door have a twist lock and laid myself flat against the door. She played it off cool. Oh, sorry, I didn't mean to scare you, I was just checking on you. Now my teen angst got the better of me, so I said as confidently as I could back, go away and take whoever you're with away too. By this point she realized I knew something was going down and she started banging her fist on my door, screaming and shouting to open up. She almost started begging when the two guys came charging up the stairs. The second man took on the most soothing tone he could. Hey, my name, right? We just want to talk about something, that's all. Holly is really upset and we need your help. How about you screw off or I'll call the police, is all I could muster back. With what phone? Holly laughed, scoffing, and the guys let out a quick laugh too. One of them leaned against the door on the other side and without wavering stated, if you open the door, it will be better than if you don't and we have to kick it down. I didn't have a witty comeback or even the strength to say no. I was 16 and if they got it, I didn't stand a chance. Both the guys set off in what I guess was their native tongue. A minute passed of this until I was caught off guard by blow after blow on my door. I backed away and my door made a noise that said it couldn't take two guys kicking it. I scan around the room frantically. My brain starts a mantra of, shit. I don't know what to do. As I dash to the other side of the room looking for my window keys, I grab them from my jeans, fumble with the window, and scream like I've never done before. They stop banging and realize I wasn't worth jail time, I guess, and me screaming like that is going to have everybody opening their front doors to see what's happening. I hear the stampede down the stairs and the back door swing open then slam shut. I stopped screaming and slid down the wall into a little ball. I have no idea how long I was sitting there thinking what if and what if they, and I didn't stop. What ifing until the sun came up. I ran downstairs, chained and bolted the back door in front, then hid away for a week. Holly and the two other men never came back. She didn't leave anything behind except clothes, and I didn't tell Rush House what happened until they came round on a house check and saw the state of my door. But by then it had been a month, and now I'm older, I wonder what the heck they've been doing since. Long story short, the only reason my new roommate wanted to know so much about me and be friendly was so she could sell me for sex, I think, to two blokes. So Holly and your two friends, let's not meet.